Welcome back, all of my wonderful nonprofit whisperers. And so glad that you are here with us once again today. And so, how are you enjoying our channel so far? Is it helping you at all? I hope that you've taken the opportunity to subscribe to our channel below. Please make sure that you do that. And if you have friends in the nonprofit sector, make sure that you're sharing with them about all that we're talking about here on this channel. If there are topics that we've not yet addressed that you would like to hear more about, let me know, because I'm here to serve you, our wonderful audience. Thank you to those who have subscribed already. I so appreciate and value that. Thank you so much for doing that. So myself, Erika Gerena, am your host, and Jim Dempsey. We have, between the both of us, over 50 years of experience serving this nonprofit sector. Today's episode is going to be about unpacking what the role between the executive director and the board is supposed to be in the nonprofit. So I want you to stay tuned and also pay very close attention to some very specific things that we begin to unpack, especially when it comes to the legal ramifications of that kind of relationship. You're going to want to hear this. It's very important. Again, I am sharing these things with you so that you don't have to go through these headaches that we, Jim and I, had to go through. So you're welcome in advance. So without further ado, here we go, unpacking this very important episode.
Well, welcome everyone to our next episode of the Nonprofit Whisperer. I'm Jim Dempsey, along with my co-host Erika Gerena. I've been working with nonprofits for the last 36 years. Erika has been working with nonprofits for 22 years, and we're excited to share with you our experience of working with nonprofit organizations. Our episode today, we're going to focus in on the board of directors, and especially on that unique relationship between the board of directors and the executive director. We're excited to share with you our perspective. Erika, what are your thoughts on what we're going to be covering today?
Well, there's 4 different areas that we want to cover today, Jim, in particular, correct? So 4 categories that we want to unpack, because this is very important when we're trying to address this very important vital area of a nonprofit organization, because this category is actually provides oversight for the organization. It helps clarify the mission for the organization, helps develop relationships, and also manages finances for the organization. So very important.
Absolutely. Erika, start us out a little bit on that whole category of oversight. What does that entail?
So essentially, Jim, what the board does is that they're setting the policy and governance. They are the rule makers. All right. So they are putting that accountability in place, which is super important. People tend to think nonprofits have no rules. They can do whatever they want. Everybody's flexible, but that is not true. There is absolutely the need to have an accountability in place. They just think nonprofit means everybody can do whatever they want, and that's not true. As anything else, there's an accountability, and that's where the board comes in. They set that policy, they set the governance. In addition to that, they are the ones that hold that CEO and the executive director accountable. So they assess that person. That's the person that's constantly, checking in with that leader to say, are you well? Are you doing your job? Are you managing things of your finances, the reporting, everything? Are you doing that well? So they're holding that individual accountable. Are they managing their staff well? They're paying attention to that kind of thing. And at the same time, if that individual is not doing a good job, they are the ones that come alongside and they dismiss that individual. On the opposite side of that also if an organization is going through a difficult time or a search of an executive director, the board is the one that takes on that responsibility. So that policy, that governance, that is one of the roles that they assume as part of the board. What else, Jim, do they kind of take on?
Wow, that's so good, Erica. And of course that balance, there's always that fine line, because if they are hiring that executive director, of course they're going to know what the relationship is with them, what their strengths, what their weaknesses are, and they are also clarifying the role and responsibility of the executive director. Because I can tell you how often I've seen boards bring on individuals as executive director and allow them to kind of set what it is they feel, they being the executive director feels are their roles and responsibilities. And what I hear you saying is that the board really needs to clarify what those roles are. And oftentimes I've heard an executive director say, well, I made sure early on that the board understood that I have no part in raising money. And that could be nothing further from the truth.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things as the second element is that of relationships, and the board's responsibility as being one of the chief players in the fundraising and development area. Building relationships with the constituency is just so vital and so important. If a board is structured properly, they are major donors themselves. One of the things that I believe is important is that in searching for the correct board members, you need to start with your major donors, those individuals who are interested in the organization already and already giving significantly. That narrows down your search into two areas that are vitally important when recruiting board members. Are they interested? Do they have a heart and a passion for what you're doing? And are they willing to give significantly to further the mission of the organization? So if you know those two things already, recruiting board members is a lot easier. But what we're asking them to do is to branch out and to get to know the constituency, those individuals who give themselves to the organization. So your board needs to be your chief representative, needs to be in charge in a lot of ways of the PR in conjunction with the executive director, but setting the standard for interaction with the public and interaction with your donor base. So those two things are really important. Now that leads us to the all important mission. So Erika, tell us a little bit about the board members' role in the mission of the organization.
It's almost like the perfect segue also, because when we always talk about the mission, it's always like the representation and identity of the organization. And so the role of a board member is they are there to clarify, help to define and clarify the mission of the organization, and to make sure and hold the organization accountable to stick to that mission. And so they set the programs, they establish the goals, and they set policies that align with that. And so they're holding the organization accountable to those goals as well, to making sure that they stick to that, make sure the finances align with those goals to help accomplish those goals and execute on that. And then they approve the long-term plans to help attain those goals as well. And so, and clarifying that the mission is so important as well, because when you look at your board, you want to make sure that when you line them up, they are telling the story of that mission. So to Jim's point, when he's talking about, are they givers? Are they helping to, to serve that organization? Are they a part of that? Are they volunteers of your organization? Do they believe in the cause of the organization? Are they embodying like what it is that your organization is about? That's what you want to be able to represent, and that they're futuristic, that they're helping to move the organization forward. and that it's diverse in their makeup. You want to be intentional in really making sure that the organization is the board is complementing what your staff are not, even, so that way you're covering the gaps that you might have within the organization, that board complements, and fills kind of the holes that you may have within the organization. So I definitely would say pay attention to that and make sure, because that board is telling a story of your organization in and of itself, and is very representative of your mission. So, Jim, what else are we missing? A very important piece.
Wait, Erica, this is so different from what I'm hearing. Are you telling me the board needs to play an active role in
No.
setting policies, in raising money, in actually how the money is spent? I thought I just needed to go to a board meeting. They told me that all I had to do was be able to breathe and have a pulse, maybe show up to a board meeting or so. Are you telling me there's more than that?
I know. Isn't that wild? There are so many organizations that I've worked with that, I mean, like they go in, just the one person is calling the shots the whole time, or the staff themselves are the ones conducting and making all of the decisions, and the board just signs off on it. Or the board is the makeup of all of kind of the same people, the volunteer that's been there for 35 years and is just going to say yes to everything. And that is not the kind of board that you want to put together. I'm telling you, your organization will stay stagnant. It will not grow. It will not remain relevant. They will not challenge you. You want a board that is going to challenge you in a healthy way, of course, that is going to keep you accountable, that is going to challenge the CEO and the executive director, because that person needs to be held accountable, and that person needs to be constantly assessed and constantly grow as well. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of yes men and women around the table, and that's not healthy for an organization. You want it to be, fruitful. You want it to bear fruit, and you don't want it to just be a bunch of people signing off on a ton of things and not paying attention. That's not an effective board. And so,
Well,
pay
you're so
close
right.
attention to that, because we see a lot of that these days, and that drives me crazy. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Erica, the fourth area is that most sobering one that we cannot deny and we can't miss, and that is the financial management of the organization.
Say it
I can't
again,
tell
Jim.
you
Say
how
it again.
often that element is neglected. Financial management.
Yeah.
They have got to have the oversight of the financial management of the organization. They have a fiduciary right to make sure that the finances, both the inflow and the outflow of the money, is managed properly. We need to make sure that whoever is our accountant, our bookkeeper, our treasurer, are managing the money properly, managing the money correctly.
Yeah.
And that also, in addition to managing the money, the donations, the gifts that come in. So we need to it's the responsibility of the board that donations are received, and it's also the responsibility of the board that the donations received are spent properly, are spent wisely. I've used too often over the years the example of PTL organization. We all remember James Baker and what happened to that board after mismanagement. That board was held accountable for that.
Yep.
Well, I used that example for a long time, and now in the news right now is the Ravi Zacharias organization, and finding out the mismanagement and that the board slept on a number of elements in Ravi's life, either unintentionally or we hope not intentionally, allowed allowed things to happen in his private life that the board either didn't know about or didn't care about. And now there's a good possibility that they might actually be held accountable and held responsible for some of the things that are going on. Again, all these accusations are alleged, but it really does not look good for the Ravi Zacharias organization. I'm glad at this point the board is being as open and transparent as they possibly can, but it will be interesting to see exactly what happened. But all that to say is a board responsibility is a very high calling, and we cannot just recruit individuals with the mindset that all they need to do is come in and attend a few board meetings, maybe make an event or two, and all their responsibilities are passed along to other people. It is not that way, and it's important that everyone who's a board member and every executive director realizes that the role and responsibility of the board is a critical one.
And the translation for that out there, my friends, is you have friends all the time. And this is what's important, because people think, Jim, that if I am, let's say I'm a small nonprofit organization, or I'm just by myself and I start a nonprofit organization, and I tell you, Jim, hey, I'm starting a nonprofit and I just want you to be a part of my board. And you're my friend. Can you be a part of my board? And you say yes. What people don't understand are the legal aspect of what they are signing up for. So they just think, oh, I'm just, my name is on a document, it's not a big deal. What does that really mean, Jim? Let the people know what they're actually doing when they put their name on these documents.
Well, absolutely. Those are legal documents. There are legal ramifications to mismanagement of funds. And that's not just mismanagement of the money that's in the door, that is also making sure that the organization stays solvent. If the organization gets in debt and is not paying vendors' bills, that is the responsibility of the board. They could go back and sue those individual board members for that. If someone is mismanaging the money inside the organization, someone who is not being looked at within the organization with scrutiny as far as the way that money is used, it could come back on the board members individually. So the IRS, the federal government, when they designate that this organization is a tax exempt nonprofit organization, that is there are legal ramifications for those individuals who are not only officers but are board members to that board. So it is not just a warm body signing a piece of paper. These are legal enforceable rules and regulations, and those rules and regulations have ramifications.
So good. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for this episode. I hope that this was helpful. And so if you are putting together a board, I want you to pay very close attention, rewind this episode and watch it again, and listen very carefully for the things that we said that you need to make sure that you are looking out for in putting a board together. Know the role of a board member. Be intentional in putting the pieces together to make sure that you are putting a board together that is successful and that is going to be responsible and represent you and your organization well. Until next time, Jim and Erika here. See you next time.